price floors. Just as market prices are sometimes perceived to be too high, they are at other times seen to be too low. Most widely, the minimum wage is an example of a price floor in the market for labor. Almost as commonly, especially in more developed economies, price controls are used to boost agricultural prices in an attempt to increase farm incomes. Examples include price supports for dairy farmers and related policies supporting grain and sugar production. In general, the approach for understanding price floors is very similar to that for price ceilings. Our usual supply and demand framework. We begin with our price axis and our quantity axis, downward sloping demand curve, upward sloping supply curve, and we can show a price floor by indicating, again, a price level that in this case, one is not allowed to purchase or sell below. The price has to be at this level or above. Again, we need to think about the market structure. We can look at the case where we have a competitive market structure and perfect competition, and we'll contrast that with a case when the buyers in the marketplace have the power and we have a monopsonistic market structure. To begin with a competitive market structure, we'll start with our framework, price and quantity, downward sloping demand curve, upward sloping supply curve, and we'll add a price floor. Buyers wish to purchase an amount given where the price floor intersects with the demand curve, giving a quantity demanded, Q sub D, whereas the amount that producers wish to provide in the market is given by the intersection of the price floor and the supply curve, Q sub S. But there aren't enough buyers for all of this production, so the result in the market has to be a surplus. Moving now to a monopsonistic market structure where buyers have power, we'll set up the same framework that we always begin with, price and quantity, downward sloping demand curve, upward sloping supply curve, and now I want to start with the behavior of the buyers. They want to keep prices low for buying. They have the power to do so, so they're going to set a price resulting in a certain level of purchases by the suppliers. So we can label that the price set by the monopsonistic buyers and the resulting quantity that is offered for sale by the sellers. Now we can add the price floor to indicate the choice for a higher price in this market. With the price floor, suppliers are now willing to offer more for sale, and buyers are happy to purchase that. So quantity demanded equals quantity supplied at the new greater amount in the marketplace. The result is that we have an increase in price, which surprisingly results here in the buyers purchasing more rather than less. Prices are set in a competitive market, a price floor will generally increase price, with the higher price resulting in production increases. Even as buyers reduce purchases, a surplus will result, meaning not everyone who wants to sell the good can find a buyer in the market. In some cases, government purchases the excess production, as is often the case with agricultural goods, and either destroys it or gives away or subsidizes the sale of the surplus. In contrast, if market prices would be determined by a monopsonistic market, Where the buyer has market power, a price floor will not only raise the price to the seller, but is likely to also increase the amount of the good or service which is sold. Minimum wages are an example of price floors, and it is often argued, using the reasoning in this video, that they will cause a labor surplus, more commonly termed simply unemployment. But in practice, the evidence is quite weak that increasing minimum wages increases unemployment, and there is even research suggesting that in some cases employment increases. One explanation for these findings is that many labor markets have some element of monopsony. Indeed, most of you probably feel that employers have a great deal of power over employees. A final note on price controls. Most quiz questions you encounter on impacts of price floors and price ceilings implicitly assume that there is a competitive market structure. It's quite simply impossible to weed this out. Maybe in the real world, it's a good assumption more often than not, though maybe it's not such a good assumption at all. But in any case, if you are asked in this course or elsewhere about the impact of a price floor or ceiling, and the market structure is not given, you're just going to have to assume it's the competitive situation.